Welcome to another edition of the It's Cavalier podcast. It's your boy Mack, and tonight our Cleveland Cavaliers took on the Memphis Grizzlies for the first time this season. It's the first of two games that they will see Memphis this year, and boy, oh boy, was it a dogfight until the end. In a game where nearly half of the fucking Grizzlies roster is injured, and I'm not gonna lie, I thought this would play out a little differently. And don't get me wrong, I don't want to come off as the Grizzlies. We should just be, just be throwing this game away as a W because I didn't exactly think it would be a cakewalk. This is the NBA after all, where any team can catch you sleeping if you let them. And for what it's worth, that wasn't my overall takeaway of how the Cavs played this team. They took them seriously, in my opinion. It was just a combination of a few things that made this game go down to the wire. And keep in mind, the Cavs are still trying to sort out the rotations due to the reintegration of star point guard Darius Garland, who has apparently become fans' new scapegoat. I don't get it. I don't know. It's not surprising, though. The team also lost Jarrett Allen early in the third quarter. Hopefully, that is not a lengthy absence. Definitely not something that I'm looking forward to if it really causes Allen to miss a significant portion of time. And don't get me wrong, I was pleasantly surprised with the minutes that Damian Jones gave Cleveland tonight. He actually had quite a nice night in relief of Allen. Jones was able to put up 7.6 boards and an assist, including 3 blocks. And one of them was really, really highlight worthy. I'll probably end up clipping it later on. But yeah, that's not necessarily something you want to see. It just seems like for every time this team gets a little bit closer to full strength, something else just has to happen. We get Evan Mobley back, we get Darius Garland back, and then right after that, we lose Jarrett Allen for who knows how long. I'm hoping that it is not a significant injury, but we shall see. Glad the game still resulted in a win, obviously. Back-to-back wins for this Cleveland team and 2 nail biters of games against Detroit and now Memphis. But it doesn't come without a little shroud of darkness over it. Reaper here, Reaper 23 says, Spida on a tear, January's player of the month. Yeah, man, this dude has been doing some phenomenal shit. Really in the absences of Darius Garland and Evan Mobley. And I'm glad that he was rewarded for his efforts with that Player of the Month award, just the second Cleveland Cavalier to win that award. LeBron James obviously being the other. But yeah, Mitchell has been nothing short of amazing, whether he's playing the point, whether he's out there in an off-ball role. And now with DG back in the fold, you're probably going to see those two kind of staggered a little bit more. We'll talk about Garland here in a little bit, but I have been very, very impressed. And that's crazy because I was already really impressed coming off of the season that Donovan gave us last year. Tonight, Donovan would finish with 25, 4, and 7 on 10 and 19 from the field, including 3 of 9 from three-point distance. And John Michael and AC made mention of it during the broadcast, but this man's work in the clutch is just phenomenal. Whenever the Cavs really, truly need a basket or they need to just kind of pull away, separate themselves from the opponent late down the stretch, Mitchell just always seems to be up to the task, whether he's driving inside, knifing his way into the paint for a contested layup, or he's just literally pulling up in the face of the opponent and drilling a triple on their head. He has game for the moment, which leaves me to believe that come this postseason, he'll right the wrongs that happened in that Knicks series where he just kind of wilted. I really honestly feel like Donovan you can win a championship with him as your best player. I feel like that is certainly possible. I know a lot of people would disagree with that notion, but I feel like he has shown enough that he can carry the load in the postseason. Derpy Entertainment, of course, Allen gets hurt. Yeah, I made mention of that. It's ridiculous. I don't know if it's just bad luck. I don't know if it's somebody pissed off the basketball gods. Who knows? But every single time we oh my gosh. Every time we scratch and claw our way to full strength or close to it, we always take a step back. It always feels like that way. We get DG back, we get Evan back, and we lose Allen. Hopefully not for long. John Turner says Strus was clutch at the end. Hopefully that carries over to the next game. We need a shooting. And this is the thing. Like I know social media does not make for good podcasting. For anybody who shares that line of thought, you might want to exit now because I'm about to go into the social media rant about Strus. I'm tired of seeing it. Yes, Max Strus is slumping right now, or at least heading into this game. He just hadn't been performing up to what we know that he is capable of. And for me, it's just like, okay, the guy may not be shooting the basketball all that well, but he is clearly providing in other areas of the game, whether that is rebounding, whether that's facilitation. And you saw that tonight. He started off the game with a couple of really nice passes out of the DHO or out of the pick and roll with Jarrett Allen. You can clearly see the chemistry is building there. He was building that with Evan Mobley prior to his absence, and now with Evan Mobley back in the fold, I can only believe that those assist numbers are probably going to go up, and the field goal attempts will probably go down. He only took 8 shots tonight. He was efficient, 50% from the field, 4 of 8, and 2 of 4, more importantly, from three-point distance. That's probably the most important thing of this game in that regard for Strus, is just the fact that he has been able to knock down the shots. Now, overall, I believe this factors in tonight's game. Over his last 5 games, 10.4 points, 6.4 rebounds, which is crazy for his size, 3 assists, 1.2 steals, and just 41.9% from the field. And for me, it's just like, okay, I know what you are capable of. I know that you can knock down these shots. I know that you are a streaky shooter. But in the nights when your shot is not falling, are you providing in other areas? Because more often than not, he is providing when it comes to rebounding. He is generating second chance opportunities. He is playing a high level defense, or at least above average defense. So for people who just are poo-pooing on him, or just don't feel like he deserves to be within that starting lineup, or he deserves to lose some minutes, you have to keep in mind that this is the type of player that we brought in, right? This is a streaky shooter, but he is fully capable of providing in other areas. So I'm not of the mindset that you need to trade him. I'm not of the mindset that you need to bench him. I'm not of the mindset that he needs to lose minutes. And tonight's performance is really what encapsulates that. And when he's playing confidently, it makes all the difference, because believe it or not, whether or not he's knocking down that shot, he's still generating gravitational pull. People are still respecting his ability to shoot, and that gravity provides spacing for the rest of the offense. It does open the floor. I get it. Sam Merrill is not Sam Merrill is not missing right now, and he's looking like an absolute flamethrower out there, and he has given you really, really good production in his role. But does that mean that he should warrant more minutes over Strus right now? I just don't think so. I feel like Merrill is in the perfect role. I feel like Karis LeVert, Isaac Okoro, they're doing things, they're stepping up, and I feel like as long as JB can figure out a way to sort all this out, and Strus on his part can knock down some shots consistently, there's no reason to panic. And that was my main takeaway. He had some very clutch plays down the stretch, that triple and whatnot, the offensive rebound to go in and get that layup. He does things that often go unnoticed. He really does. Tom K says, again, put that respect on Dean Wade. Yeah, I mean, Wade shooting 2 of 5 from 3-point distance tonight, and he is a 40+% shooter from 3-point distance this season. Granted, it's not on a high volume, but that combined with the stellar defense that you're getting from him, just absolutely lovely. And I will take it any day of the week. And the other day against Detroit, I was of the mindset, because this is the game in which they got Evan back, they got DG back. I was of the mindset that they would probably sit Dean Wade for Georges Niang, just based upon what we've seen from JB in the past. But clearly, I'm happy to be wrong about that. Both of them played, but Dean got in the game first. And to be honest with you, from what I've seen from him, and this has been my biggest gripe with Dean Wade, because you guys know, if you're a listener of this podcast, if you've been listening for any period of time, you know that I am a fan of Dean Wade. At one point, when Corey was still my co-host, we were always saying, this is the official Dean Wade podcast, stuff like that, little jokes and things like that. I've always been a huge believer in Dean Wade, the hypothetical version of him. If he can do that, If he can shoot the ball confidently, if he doesn't look afraid and tentative, and he pulls up with confidence, then generally he's a good player. He's an impactful player. That is the biggest separating factor between him and George Niang. George Niang has like unlimited confidence to shoot the ball, whether that's from the 3-point distance or that's driving inside, which I hate. And he makes them more often than not these days, but I absolutely hate when he drives in. But my point being, he's confident. And not in seasons past, but at the beginning of the season, the one thing that was hindering Dean was the fact that he just didn't look confident. There were times in which he would get the ball, he would have an opportunity, he would have enough space to pull up, and he just wouldn't do that. This stretch of games without Evan Mobley, while he's been in the starting lineup, he looks confident as hell. And bear in mind, he's still not going to get like a high amount of shots. That's just not going to happen. You're not likely to see him eclipse the 10 or more shot barrier more than a handful of games a season, if at all. It just isn't something that you're likely to see. So when you do have those opportunities, when the ball does swing your way, especially if you're out in the corners and the defense is sleeping on you and they're not paying attention, pull the fucking trigger. And I feel like more often than not, Dean has done that recently. He's also providing rebounding. He's providing defense. What more can you ask of him? He's a low usage player, so I love it. Tune In Sports says down here, JB was pissing me off at first, but a win is a win. Memphis was playing free out there. Yeah, I mean, just similar to this Detroit game, there was a lot of stellar shot making on their part, right? Aldama 4-7 from 3-point distance. Guys with Scottie Pippen Jr., man, and I'm a fan of Scottie Pippen Jr. Getting some wide open looks. Cleveland needed to really close out a little bit better, especially in that first half. I felt like they clamped down to begin the second, and I really feel like the defense picked up as a whole. But yeah, there was definitely points throughout that first half where I was just like, man, they are getting way too many open looks. Jaren Jackson Jr., he was eating from inside, and that was a game, obviously, where you could feel the absence, especially in that second half of Jarrett Allen, of Evan Mobley, because Jackson was just eating Cleveland's front court alive. He was getting whatever he wanted. 4 out of Memphis's 5 starters scored in double figures. It was free flowing, as Tune In says down here. Not necessarily something that was all too encouraging, especially considering that Cleveland, this is a very highly rated defense, but guys stepped up when it mattered. And that's the biggest thing. It resulted in a victory, now back-to-back victories. And for a Cleveland team that has had to navigate injury woes all season, I really hope that they don't have to do that with Jarrett Allen. I'm not paying attention right now too much to the actual news in regards to that. So if anybody who's listening to the pod right now live, you could inform me of that update. I would love to know if there is one out there. But yeah, I'm really hoping that doesn't end up being a sustained absence. Sven Reek Gaming says down here, people need to stop blaming JB when players don't play well. I think this season you're seeing less of that, in more the fact that people get pissed with JB in regards to some of the rotations. That's at least that's my takeaway. That's my opinion. I feel like people are more pissed at who JB plays rather than JB's coaching himself, because JB's actually, I feel like he's elevated his coaching. His out of timeout calls are better. He's challenging more calls more accurately. He's really getting guys more involved. The tempo is picked up, the ball movement. It's definitely something that has been a major improvement this season from JB. So I don't think it's necessarily people are crapping on him because of players not playing well. It's more so, in my opinion, the fact that people are pissed off about the rotations. Guys like Sam Merrill maybe not getting enough run. Maybe people still pissed off about Craig Porter Jr. not being in the rotation. Stuff like that. And then you'll have your minute staggering folks who think that DG and Donovan probably shouldn't play on the floor too long together. Same thing with Evan and Jarrett. And although they were doing these things last year, right? They were staggering the minutes last year, but the problem was that they didn't have the spacing needed to do that around him last year. This year we have it, right? You have Niang, you have Wade shooting much better. You have Okoro looking like an improved shooter. You have Sam Merrill, who's a fucking flamethrower. You know, the list goes on and on. You got Karis LeVert doing his thing. But yeah, I mean, you can afford to do that now. You couldn't necessarily do that too often last season. And so you will have stretches like we saw tonight, even in late in that third quarter, where Donovan Mitchell goes to the bench and you have Darius running the show, right? And he did actually generate a couple of good looks. A lot of possessions resulted in some really, really clean looks, especially on back-to-back possessions in which Sam Merrill knocked down triples. You had Darius Garland driving baseline and swinging a pass right out to Sam Merrill. You have the ball moving in particular with DG moving it to LeVert and LeVert moving it to Merrill, things like that. You just have a ton of versatility that you did not have with last year's roster. And so you will see more and more of those minutes where you don't have both Darius and Donovan on the floor. And then conversely, you saw Donovan come in to close the game because Darius is still on the minutes restriction, and you have Donovan, kind of leading the pack as well, getting the ball to his guys when they're open and scoring whenever he needs to. And I've often said this, especially as of late during the stretch, Donovan really continues to look like the best combo guard in the NBA. If you need him to go out there and play make, he will do that. If you need him to get you a clutch basket and score, he will do that as well. And honestly, he's playing some of the most inspired defense of his NBA career. We all know, like, there are points at which you did not get the best defensive effort out of Donovan earlier points of his career because he's carrying such a gargantuan offensive load. This season, he has taken the defensive challenge, and it just started last year, right? But it's really become apparent this year where he's just picked up his level of play, picked up his level of intensity on that end of the floor, and I've loved it because he's setting the tone. And when your leader is doing that, it's easier for you to pick up and follow. Because one, it not only sets the tone for the rest of the team. If you don't do it, you might not be in the rotation because we know JB values defense over almost everything else, right? Very defensive minded head coach. That's why you see a player like Dean Wade drawing more minutes than a Sam Merrill or a George Niang. That's precisely what my takeaway in regards to that is. Tune in says, yeah, DG getting hate now. I knew it was going to come after our run. Yeah, I mean, he's become the next scapegoat for this team. And it just always seems like whenever a player goes out, if the team does well, then therefore that means that player was the problem, when that's not even remotely the case. I had a lot of people throwing the Cavs record with and without Darius Garland in my face. And I'm just like, dude, this team had the number one defense in the NBA last season and in the playoffs last season during their series. And somehow you still believe that Darius Garland makes this team's defense much, much worse. There's an obvious trade-off. I get that. But in saying that, the trade-off is offense, right? DG provides you a very high quality playmaker. He provides you another go-to scorer in situations where things break down and you need a guy to get you a bucket, and Darius Garland can be that guy. I just don't get it. It pisses me off. And so for now, I just got to kind of take a step back from it because people are starting to devalue him to a point that is just disgusting. I don't get it. Tom K says Don should be a all-star starter over Dame, no question for me. I agree wholeheartedly, Tom. I feel like we talked about this a lot on the last pod, but for me, it's just the numbers are very comparable, but the role and what Donovan means to his team is much different than what Dame means to his. Donovan is the best player on the Cleveland Cavaliers. They go as he goes more often than not. Milwaukee, they have a top 5 player. They have a top 5 player in the world in basketball in Giannis Antetokounmpo. They would still be a threat to win a postseason series or win enough games in the regular season to be considered a high seed, probably without Dame, because of Giannis. If you take Donovan Mitchell away from the Cleveland Cavaliers, I'm not so sure the same can be said. Would they be able to make the playoffs? Yeah, I feel like they could, but their ceiling decreases exponentially. He is that important to this team. And in order for them to reach their pinnacle, you're going to have to get a real solid effort out of him. And he's done that this year and more. He has stepped up in the face of adversity. And I love it, man. I love it. And I feel like the fact that he won the player of the month, that speaks volumes about what the league thinks about him and the job that he's done. And I do feel like he kind of got snubbed. Not even kind of. I feel like he got snubbed by Dame going in over him, but it is what it is. At least he made the All-Star roster. Speaking of that, Jarrett Allen, he was not among the selections, right? Does that mean that he does not have a chance? No, because we got the news today that Joel Embiid, I believe, tore his meniscus, or at least a portion of it. I don't know what the timetable is on that. I haven't actually checked on it, but that opens the door for injury replacement for Jarrett. The other is Julius Randle. Julius Randle made it in as a reserve, and he is obviously not going to be able to play. So you have two possibilities for Jarrett to make it in. The problem is that there are other worthy candidates as well. When you're talking about Kristaps Porzingis, who's been phenomenal for the Boston Celtics this season, when you're talking about Trae Young, as much as I hate Trae Young, he's probably going to get a look as well. And then I know TNT, the broadcasters there, they really like Miles Turner. So I don't know. There are a couple of guys. I even had somebody mention Scotty Barnes as a possibility. And I'm just like, nah, I don't think so. He plays for a piss poor Toronto team, but I don't know. I don't decide these things. I just I roll with the punches here. But I feel like Jarrett Allen is as deserving as a candidate as any. But problem now is Jarrett Allen could miss some time himself. So I don't know. Sucks, but I still feel like there is a possibility, depending upon the time frame of his injury or what his injury actually is, uh, that he could be an injury replacement in the All-Star game, because I feel like he's deserved it. He's been phenomenal over this stretch of basketball without Darius, without Evan, and he has been a driving force. It's not just Donovan Mitchell. He's been a driving force in getting this team. Yes, Jim Carrey, indeed. Cue the meme. There's always a chance for him. They do need the All-Star break, man. They do need, and Noah Heritage says down here, this team needs the All-Star break badly. They do. They need the help. But the one thing that they've shown us is that they have incredible depth. If you cut the head off, another will appear type of thing, right? It's just, for me, the depth has been proven this season, but I don't want to continue this heading into the All-Star break. Hopefully this changes. Hopefully we can have a sustained period of time with our starting five out there. Universal Law says DG is going to mess up our flow. I don't know, man. I truly do not believe that. What was I saying prior to this? If you've been a listener of the pod for a length of time, or if this is your first time listening, let me just tell you, I don't believe this because I feel like, one, the man just came back. You got to give him time to develop a chemistry with some of these guys that he hasn't had enough time to play with this season. One, I feel like he will give you more than he gives up on the defensive end. And I feel like the level of playmaking, the ball movement, and the ability to score when things break down, especially in the postseason, right? I feel like those are all abilities that Darius Garland has. Now, obviously, there's a limit to what he can provide on the defensive end. He is a smallish guard, but I will take the trade-off. I feel like he still gives this team a higher ceiling with them than without him. I just truly believe, especially in the postseason. Regular season, it's one thing, but in the postseason, you do need guys. You do need guys who can go out there and get you a bucket. That's just the reality of things. The flow that you're speaking of, I don't necessarily believe that he's going to do that. There was always going to be an adjustment period. Let's just understand that. The same thing with Evan Mobley when he came back against Detroit the other day. There's always going to be an adjustment period. And if people can understand that and just kind of give it time, let the starting five gel, because the team has only played 12 games as a starting unit together. That's it. They've just played 12 games as a starting unit. So we've not really gotten to see them play for a sustained period of time. We haven't gotten to see what the added spacing brings to the table when you're talking about Max Strus out there. And we know Max has not played up to his full capabilities, but he still spaces the floor. He still generates gravity. And so you have to give it time. The problem is, dudes just keep getting hurt. And so I don't know. I really don't know. Noah Heritage says, the point guard is literally most important role on a basketball court. Expecting DG to come back after 6 weeks and play perfect is insane standards to hold him to. And this is the fucking thing to me. This is what pisses me off so much. Not so much universal laws comment down here, but some of the stuff that I've been seeing, it's just like, did you expect him to hit the ground running as soon as he came back? One, he's been dealing with a hand injury all season. He got his jaw broken. And so all the chemistry that he would have been able to develop with some of these new pieces that have come on board or have come on as of late, it went out the window. And so to expect the guy to come right out of the gate and just be his normal self or what we know him capable of, that's just foolish to me, in my opinion. You can't expect him to come back and just look excellent. The one thing that I will say about him tonight is that in that first half, there were some careless turnovers. There were some things that you could kind of tell, like he's just not up to speed right now. I don't think it's a game flow issue. I don't think it's a chemistry issue necessarily in that regard. I just feel like he just doesn't have his legs under him just yet. And obviously they have him on a minutes restriction for a reason. In that second half, if you could tell, especially in the third quarter minutes without Donovan Mitchell out there, you saw DG show flashes of what he is normally capable of, the high-level playmaking, the shot making, the shot creation. You saw that in stretches. And as he continues to get back in basketball shape, I feel like that is probably going to be what you see more often than not. And so, as Noah says down here, it is the most important role. And that's why we've seen Donovan Mitchell, like him shifting to that point guard role in Darius's absence. He's made it so that you don't necessarily have to worry about that being a negative. You don't have to worry about nobody. You don't have to worry about a player out there not being able to do that, because at any point in time during these games, you can either have Darius running the show or you can have Donovan run the show. And then you're going to have your minutes where both of them are out there sharing the floor together. And so I'm just not as worried about it as a lot of fans are. I'm trying to have patience here, because people, what this win streak has done is to just kind of put a magnification on certain guys having to perform to a standard that may or may not be attainable, or just might be unfair, right? You can't expect a guy to come back and just hit the ground running as soon as they're coming back from an injury. It isn't going to happen. Evan Mobley looked rusty the other day too, and I didn't see a lot of people complaining about that. I don't know if it's people holding DG to a different standard or people just not believing in this backcourt tandem and preferring DG to not be here. But more often than not, it seems like the latter. Tom K says DG will get his legs underneath him soon. He pace feel a bit more under control. Saw that all shooter lineup they rolled out with DG, Merrill, Niang, Wade, LeVert. Yeah, there were some funky lineups out there, but I mean, I think they got away with it because of who Memphis rolled out, right? They didn't really have like a true big out there. I guess Jarrett Jackson Jr. actually counts as that, but they had Dean Wade playing defense on him during stretches. So I don't know. I didn't love that, because you never really love the tallest guy on your side of the court being 6'8", but I understand the rationale, the shooting. And that's, like I said earlier, they didn't have that last season. They didn't have the ability to roll out a lineup like that, because frankly, nobody could knock down shots on that second unit consistently. Maybe Karras, because Karras experienced a career season from 3-point distance last year, but he had his stretches of inconsistency as well, and he can only do so much. I don't know. But yeah, I do feel like there are certain lineups like this one that you have down here, Tom, where it might, you may not agree with it, or I might not agree with it, but it's definitely something that JB has at his disposal. Definitely something that will give you confidence in the future as these guys get more time playing with one another, though. Tune in says some people want DG to come off the bench and run the second unit. I don't know what the fuck people are thinking that for. Clearly, DG is not going to come off the bench. They would sooner trade Darius Garland than have him coming off the bench. And I do not feel like either one is either one of those things is going to come to fruition. But yeah, that's just ridiculous to me. Darius Garland is at his best when he is in that starting lineup. You're going to have to live with the fact that Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell are in the lineup together. And at certain points, they will be staggered. And they can do that this year. Noah says, at the end of the day, what are we going to do about it anyway? We're not trading any of the core forward before the deadline. Might as well just enjoy the game and deal with the issues in the offseason. Yes. And so this is a great point because I am of the mindset that this postseason is going to go a long way in determining the direction of this franchise. If the Cavs get swept in the first round, you can best believe there are going to be some big time changes, not even just to the head coaching position, because JB will probably be the first person out the door in the event that there is another playoff collapse. But you could probably see some of the other assets traded out as well. That's just my opinion. I don't know that for sure, obviously, but you could probably expect sweeping changes if another playoff collapse ensues. And so this postseason is going to go a long way in determining how far or what changes need to be made or how things need to be tweaked. Conversely, if they have a deep playoff run, you may not see too many substantial changes. You obviously probably wouldn't see any of the core four moved. You might see some ancillary moves on the on the edges, right? But you're not going to see anything big time. Tune in says down here, I wasn't too much a fan of that lineup. I prefer a little more defense, but I see JB as experimenting with his lineups. And this is what you love, right? Now that you have that depth, tune in, you have that ability to throw out funky lineups like this. You couldn't do that last year because you just didn't have the requisite shooters. You didn't have the requisite depth, or at least guys that JB trusted. And so I love it, man. I love it. And I hope he continues to do that. Eventually, he's got to settle on something, some definitive stuff. Now, obviously, I say that, but there will be scenarios. Oh my gosh. There will be situations and scenarios in which you might need to adjust on the fly. If a guy is not having a good game or underperforming, you might need to throw out a different look out there. But more often than not, I hope that JB kind of nails down a standard rotation, for lack of a better term. Chaz Orlando says Dean Wade held up well at the 5 in crunch time. He did. I think that was more a microcosm of what Memphis was trotting out there rather than the norm, right? I do not love Dean Wade playing the 5 in crunch time for a substantial portion of the time. I'm glad it worked tonight. But I wouldn't put too much value in that working more often than not. I love Dean Wade though. He's been nothing short of phenomenal this season when they've called upon him. Universal Law also says, I feel the same way about Evan Mobley. It's their lack of aggressiveness that scares me. I think that with Mobley, right, a lot of people are seeing what some of these other bigs are doing around the league. They're seeing Chet, they're seeing Wemby. There's a lot of names you could throw out there. They're saying, wow, this guy has not progressed offensively, or he's not aggressive enough, or there's no consistent 3-point shot or mid-range jumper. And for me, it's just like the kid is young. There's still time for him to develop these things. Aggressiveness, on the other hand, I'm not so certain that's something that you develop over time. I feel like that's a mentality. And I feel like Mobley is capable of being aggressive. It just doesn't happen as often as you'd like. Does it scare me? No. I feel like that is something that you just have to watch play out. And I think as he gets older, as he adds more tools to the shed, to his game, that hopefully that lack of aggressiveness won't be something that hinders him. Especially if you have somebody out there like Jarrett Allen who is playing much more aggressively. So that's kind of where I stand on the core 4 at the moment. Purely in regards to this game, though, there were a lot of things to love. There were some things to hate out there, obviously, like that funky lineup that we talked about. But one of the things that I absolutely loved tonight was the fact that the Cavs actually seem to get some motions run for Sam Merrill. I saw a lot of complaints about that. A lot of people complaining that Sam Merrill was standing in the corners, which is not even remotely true, by the way, because the dude is like literally always in motion. He is constantly in motion, whether he's trying to come off of screens, whether he's staggering, whether he's trying to set somebody else up or cutting. He's doing it all. He's not just standing in the corners. And so I love the fact that JB was unafraid to play him, and he really, really came through. 9 points on the night, 3 of 5 from three-point distance. And the thing that I have absolutely loved about the Sam Merrill minutes is the fact that the defense is scrambling to defend him. Like we saw it in the Clippers game. We kind of saw it against Detroit too, it stretches. But it's, for me, like the fact that the defense is so scared of him and will go over screens now. They will face guard him. They will follow him. It just, I did not think that we would have a player on our roster like that this year, outside of maybe Donovan or Darius or somebody like that. But for a reserve to come in and do that, it's been a fun ride. And there's a lot of different comparisons that people are making. You got Kyle Korver, as Tunin says down here, baby Korver. I've seen people make comparisons to Klay Thompson, players of that ilk, and that's what I've enjoyed the most about the Sam Merrill minutes is the scare that he puts into the opposition. The scouting report is out on him. Like the teams are not giving him easy looks, and he's still knocking down shots. It's phenomenal. It's something that has been very refreshing to watch. Jay Quest says down here, when Merrill cuts through the paint, the entire defense has their eye on him. They really do. It's not even just cutting through the paint either. It's out on the wings. It's on the perimeter when he's trying to go around, go around some DHOs or some basic screens. The defense is making sure that they have an eye on him on every single possession. I saw more than a handful of possessions tonight where they were literally face guarding him, so afraid that he would pop out on a screen and just pull up instantly. Something that the Cavs did not have at their disposal last year. And so I remain very, very impressed with Sam Merrill. And I said this a couple of pods ago. If he was like 2 or 3 inches taller, we'd probably be talking about him in that starting unit, like time to have a conversation kind of stuff. Just because of how much he impacts the game from a spacing standpoint. And that's not, again, no slight to Max Strus, who I still am a big believer in, but Sam's just balled out in every opportunity that he's gotten, at least every extended opportunity. We know the Clippers kind of took him out of his element to a degree, but even in that game, there were possessions in which you could see that he was bending the defense. You could see that there were considerable spacing generated from him because he took some of the best perimeter defenders off the, out of the game out there. When you're talking about Kawhi Leonard stepping out there and defending you, and you and other players not having to worry about Leonard on them, that's big time to me. That is, they're paying him that much respect. That's the way I look at it. Like they respect his ability to knock down shots so much that they are getting perimeter defenders out there no matter what. So that should only open up the floor for everybody else in that second unit and in stretches where he's playing with some of the starters, which we know how deadly the Donovan Mitchell to Sam Merrill connection has been. And I hope and pray that Darius Garland, as we saw tonight on a few possessions, I hope that Darius Garland to Sam Merrill becomes a worthwhile connection as well. And you've seen that play out. And so we just got to be patient here. Tunin says, I'm glad Cleveland gave him a chance. I am too, man. And they got him for a relatively cheap contract. I need to look at the contractual numbers again, but they got him on that multi-year deal. And he's by far become one of the best shooters in the league. I know I say this on social a lot, but while he may not be the best shooter in the league, while I'm hyping him up to be, he is legitimately a top 5 shooter right now. Statistically, since he's been given an opportunity to play and come into this rotation, he has been a top 5 shooter in this league. And that's phenomenal, man. That's not something I anticipated happening. What else happened tonight? Well, I love the fact that Isaac Okoro, again, playing high-level defense, him being unafraid to pull the trigger and take that three-point shot. And I feel like JB got the minutes distribution right tonight. I'll say that. And that is not always going to be the case because you're not going to be seeing a rotation that features Jarrett Allen and Darius Garland playing sub 30 minutes as the season goes on, as those guys get off a minutes restriction. And same can be said with Evan Mobley when he comes back. So I enjoyed the minutes distribution tonight. JB kind of pulled the right strings here. You saw Levert leading the pack, and Levert had a pretty big night himself tonight. 16 points on 6 of 10 from the field, and some much needed baskets down the stretch in this game to keep the Cavs within it or pull ahead. Niang, it wasn't the best game from him. It also wasn't the worst either. And you're just going to kind of live with what production he gives you because he is one of the only front court options that can space the floor outside of Dean Wade, of course. Jose A says Cavs Twitter is cooked. Yeah, more and more often than not, Jose, I gotta tell myself to just disengage with these folks that believe some of these things that they believe about the Cavs, because while I can borderline on overly positive, I'd rather live in a reality like that than be surrounding myself with constant negativity, because there's already too much of that in the world. I don't need to add to it on a social media app where people are just letting bullshit takes fly left and right about this team when they're winning. That's the crazy thing. They are winning games despite these injuries, and people are using it as ammunition to fuel up trade rumors and narratives and pushing agendas that just don't need to be pushed. I don't know. That's where I'm at with this Cleveland Cavaliers team. I feel like the ceiling is the roof right now. They just got to kind of sort some things out. They have to figure out the rotation. That's first things first. They have to figure out who's in, who's out, and what the minute totals will be like. And that is not a static thing. I understand that. There are going to be nights when certain guys who are deserving of minutes do not get the minutes that they are deserving of. But as long as JB can balance it out and it results in W's, far from me to be pissed about it. And so the Cavs, after tonight's victory, they are now 30-16 on the season. And checking the standings here, at least on Bleacher Report, that puts them still at the 4th seed. And with the injury to Julius Randle, the Cavs might have an opportunity to move up to number 3 here if the Knicks start losing games, which they may not. And so the Cavs, they might be locked into that 4 seed, but time will tell. I don't know. As I always tell you guys, if you'd like to reach out to me, you know how you can. It's Cavalier_pod on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and more. If you'd like to be added to the It's Cavalier Discord chat, you know what to do. Leave a rating, leave a review, send a screenshot to said review, and I will send you an invite. Go Cavs.